Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Kohler. I'm the CEO of the Jewish Community Center, the Arthur M. Glick Jewish Community Center. And Brian Modiano, the board chair, myself, and the early childhood professional team are grateful for you to join us this evening. We wanted to have a conversation with you prior to registration process beginning. And first, let me start by saying that we're really grateful to have you as part of our JCC family and to be so deeply involved in the center and supporters of us through this past year, which has been very challenging in all of us. And we are extremely grateful for your support and investment in the center. And we will always remember how kind that you've been to us over the past year. And we look forward to many more years of working together. Okay. So just to give you a little background, for some of you, this may be a review, and other this may be new. Over the past decade, the JCC had been running a deficit operation. During that period, really longer than a decade, we had accumulated over $2 million of debt. Thanks to the Jewish Federation, who had funded us, we are in debt to the Jewish Federation, but we were able to sustain our operations. In the past 3.5 years that I've been at the center, we've been very fortunate with your help and the help of many of our friends to turn the agency around. We are now in our second year of having a balanced budget, even in the midst of COVID. And we are proud of the work that we've done to become a much more responsible and successful organization. Throughout that time that the JCC has been in deficit situations, the early childhood program has been a crucial part of sustaining our organization. Over $2.5 million of our $9 million plus budget pre-COVID. Now our budget is closer to about $7 million. And unfortunately, throughout that time, teacher pay has lagged during that process. And in 2008, about a year after I got here, we formed a teacher compensation task force. And actually, you can see some names and faces of people who were on the task force at that time, who were on this call. It was made up of 7 parents, 3 board members, and 6 staff. And recommendations was to do one-time increases to teacher salaries, but spread it out over 3 years. And the goal is to really get our early childhood teachers back up to market rate for the work that for the important work that we're doing here. This June would have been the last and largest increase to get our teachers' pay back up to market rates. And we're going to go into that in a little detail. I do want to say that during COVID, to ensure that we retained our teachers, we actually accelerated their increases to help with retention and to get them back to market rate sooner. So thanks to your help, we have already achieved those goals, and we have used the generous tuition funds that you all pay each month to fund our teachers at the level that we had committed to when we did this task force. In 2016, excuse me, we expanded from 10 classrooms to 16 classrooms, opening 5 within a year. And then by 2018, we had all 18 classrooms open. The expansion was done to meet demand. We have and continue to have a very large waiting list. Additional resources were needed to meet this demand. One was space. The BJE, the Bureau of Jewish Education space, was vacated, and we were fortunate to be able to renovate their classrooms and use a dedicated playground, which allowed the expansion. The other really important resource, the really primary resource, was our full-time teachers. At the time, we had 35 teachers were needed to cover the 18 classrooms for 9 hours. We are currently at 29 teachers. Additional support staff are needed above those 35 teachers, which cover break time, lunches, vacations, personal, and sick time. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we've really worked hard on teacher recruitment, but it's been a challenge. And to say that it's been a challenge just for our center, it's it is true, but it's actually a challenge across Indianapolis. And we had the president and CEO of the JCC Associations of North America, who actually spoke to the fact that this is a challenge going across the United States, across all JCCs. And some of you are nonprofit leaders, and you probably can nod your head knowing that you've heard from other early childhood programs that staffing these programs has been a challenge. The labor pool is small. There's competitions for early childhood teachers, and with the blessing of having more children in the community and early childhood programs either expanding in numbers or in numbers of children they serve, there's more competition for those staff. We've taken pretty aggressive action to recruit staff and to support the expansion. We post and promote job openings in all the places that you would expect. In addition, to social media and search engines and job search engines, we met with area colleges, universities that have early childhood programs, and we actually were able to recruit some student intern programs with Marian College and Ivy Tech. We used a temporary placement agency to fill vacancies to support positions, only the part-time positions that cover full-time teachers for the breaks we talked about earlier. And we paid a high premium to get those placement people, but they were still unable to help us support the number of positions we need. There was a placement agency that does executive and other types of placements, and we actually sat down with them to review our recruitment and hiring strategies to really get a deep dive to say, is there something more that we could do to do better with our teacher recruitment? And what their comments were to us was, we wouldn't have done it any better than you have. And so we got confirmation that the things that we're doing and the types of things we're doing in terms of retention and recruitment and teacher salaries at this point in time, that we were beyond on the right track, that we were doing a really good job. We've even created a dashboard to track and report to senior management, which is myself and the early childhood team, on the recruitment efforts, and the metrics that we're measuring actually worsened during COVID. And we don't anticipate those things to pick up until COVID is well behind us. As I mentioned earlier, the JCC overall is down about $2 million in revenue in 2020. So we finished the agency last year in a $7 million budget, even though we had the budgeted $9 million, which is more typical for our agency. We were very fortunate that thanks to all of you, the early childhood program remained sustainable, and we were able to maintain the compensation to our core teachers. Part-time support staff were released during the early COVID phase of the JCC back in March, early April. And early childhood administrative staff stepped up. They covered breaks, lunches, and personal days. And your leaders, our leaders of the early childhood program, have continued to be hands-on in the classrooms to ensure that we provided the best care and the best support system for our teachers. From April through the summer, we changed our hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to allow the teachers and our facility staff to clean each room nightly to make sure that we were not transferring any COVID illnesses to our children or teachers. And to comply with FSSA directives, the teacher and student groups did not intermingle, and that has remained. Each group has a dedicated pod, or I call them J families, and each little J family stays with their teachers and don't interact. So if there's a positive test in a room, it does not go to a second room. From September through December of 20, our facility staff began taking care of the cleaning responsibilities from the teachers. We continue to maintain these pods to limit closures in the event of a positive case. And our hours remained consistent with 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., given the number of teaching staff on hand, that we have 29 out of the 35 positions filled. Today, we're currently at 188 students in 16 classrooms. We are at capacity for our coverage of the classrooms from 8 to 5. And unfortunately, we just don't have enough teachers to cover the regularly scheduled time off, personal days and vacation days. So when somebody needs a day off, it is very challenging. They get it, but you'll see Erin, Erica, Abby, and Beth in the classroom on a daily basis. We recently had to close 2 classrooms because we could not find qualified teachers to fill those positions. And fortunately, we were able to adjust where the children were placed. So we have maintained the same number of children, but into 16 classrooms instead of 18. So our guiding principles have always been and will continue to be the health and safety of our children, because the children in our care are our top priority. And we will always provide the highest quality of education and the TLC that you've all come to know and love here at the center. Our hours of operation are going to continue 8 to 5. And we wanted to make sure you knew this before you registered for the next session. If we added additional programming time, meaning extending the hours to 7 to 6, we would have to have closed more classrooms to have staff cover. So we chose the option that would have the least impact on the greatest number of parents, which is to maintain the current hours and not extend the hours of the program. Vaccinations of staff and parents and students will not have an impact on the programming hours. The 9-hour programming time is due to the number of staff we have available. And these hours will continue through the full school year or until such time that we're able to recruit the staff we need to go back to the hours that you've come to expect. In recognition of this change, in June, when we were supposed to implement the largest tuition increase, we will not be having any tuition increase in June. And we are continuing to recruit additional staff, but should we be unable to find qualified applicants and we need to close another classroom, we would let you know that too. We do know right now that there are 2 staff positions that may be open, and we are doing our utmost to get those positions filled and ensure that we can continue to serve all of you with the first quality experience that you've come to expect. Through the people that you know, and maybe some folks that you don't know yet know. So in summary, prior to registration that's beginning on February 17th, and then the priority registration, after this presentation, priority registration will open on February 18th. And before that happened, we wanted to let you know that the classroom operations will continue 8 to 5 until further notice. Which means until we're able to recruit more teachers, and we don't anticipating this happen until sometime after COVID is well behind us. We also wanted to share that this is a long-standing issue, and we cannot guarantee that in September, October, that folks will be here to allow us to extend those hours, but we will do our utmost to make that happen. And that is it. So I see there's, I don't know if people have any questions or comments.
I do have a question when it comes to this summer with the pool. I had heard that we are still not going to be opening that back up. Would just love to understand kind of the reasoning behind that, and if there, maybe make a suggestion for a possible solution depending on why the reasoning that is.
Okay. Well, the current health, Erica, you want to answer that one?
Well, I had a meeting with Nicole, and so if this information has changed, I apologize. Nicole and Abby and I met. Nicole is our aquatics director, to plan what swimming is going to be looking like this summer. So several weeks ago, our plan is to have swimming at least 2 or 3 days out of the week. It would be free swim. Right now, it's not set to be instructional swim. The reason why we are not swimming at this time in the indoor pool is because the capacity is at 25%, which means that it can only hold 10 individuals. If the capacity stays this summer at 25%, the outdoor pool can then hold 100 individuals, and that would allow us plenty of time, plenty of space for our classrooms to go swimming. So, Abby, if the information has changed or you received this information within the last couple of weeks, good to know, because as of January, the plan is to move forward with swimming at least 2 days a week. And then if the capacity changes for the indoor pool anytime soon, then yes, she's going to add that back in as well.
That's great. That answered all of my questions. And then, yeah, I appreciate that. That's great to hear. Oh, sorry. Just in follow up, does that also include camp, or do we not know about that yet? I know
our goal moving forward is for all of our youth programs to be able to utilize the pool this summer. So Caitlin has been working with Nicole as well, so we can set that up for camp. Yes.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that.
I've actually got a couple of questions. I'll ask both right up front. How has the student count differed pre-COVID versus COVID? I know we've got 188 now. Does that differ from pre-COVID? And then the second part of that question, if the teacher to student ratio is the same, then what are the barriers to staffing back up to a staff to accommodate the longer hours?
I'm happy to take that. So pre-COVID, so on March 1st of 2020, we had 208 children, and we were operating all 18 classrooms. So with our 188 students, we have capped some of our rooms because we do not have the staff. So for example, the infant 2 classroom in the North Wing was capped at 4. And it was capped at 4 because we were in the process of trying to find another teacher to work with that teacher. And then as we go through planning our transitions, we see where we are able to regroup the children into new classrooms, and at the same time maintaining the state license ratio. So the ratio hasn't changed. So with the barrier is that our teachers are working a 9-hour day with a 1-hour break. When we start to open it up to a 10-hour day, a 10.5-hour day, 11.5-hour day, we not only need the core teachers to be able to work their regular shift without going into overtime, but then we also need staff to help open in the morning, staff to close in the evening, again, as we had shared about the breaks. So those are some of the barriers that we have faced, but what has almost allowed us to continue operating classrooms is that we've capped rooms. So we have not gone to our waiting list for families outside of siblings, and then looked at where we could regroup to continue to maintain ratio, and then have teachers work together to operate one classroom at full capacity versus having to close a room and displacing completely those children.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question regarding the part-time faculty that had been let go that all started. Mm-hmm. Is there a potential to bring them back on, any of them that are interested, to help with the hours to help us get back to a normal schedule?
And we actually sent a call out to our part-time staff closer to July, when we had more children attending. So when we opened on April 1st, we had 10 children. So the majority of you were still paying tuition, but not everybody was attending. And with the increase of children attending, we were able to bring some of our part-time staff back on, and they're here. A few of our part-time staff went full-time and became full-time teachers, so we lost them in that capacity. And then the whole outlook of colleges, just like with schools, completely changed. So where we had students attending Ivy Tech and Marion and IUPUI, they were living here in Indianapolis, but they weren't necessarily from here. So when their schools went online, they went home and did school online. So we lost some of our staff because they went home and did school. And that was a big change to the makeup of our part-time. But some of our part-time staff that we did ask back, they came back and they're working here. But there's not enough of them to cover an 11-hour day.
Sure, and thank you. I didn't think about the school part affecting it so much, but that makes sense.
Any additional questions or?
I have a question about the taking home and bringing back of the linens every night. Could you explain a little bit about, one, the reasoning behind that, and two, if that's also intended to last until COVID is well behind us?
Good question, Sarah. So that is something that we can look into to see the guidance from FSSA. The reason behind it is that when children sleep, they might drool. So really, when we were like first into COVID, it was all about the secretions on the nap items and the safety of them staying in the classroom. And so it was shared as best practice during this time to have them washed and laundered nightly. So that is something that we can look into, moving forward, their recommendation on that, but that's why we've done it and that's why we continue to do it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess I should have asked that differently. I understand that was kind of the recommendation in the beginning, and I appreciate you answering that in such detail, Erica. I understood initially the concern that COVID could be living on surfaces like sheets and stuffed animals, perhaps, but I guess I thought that recommendation had been long since passed. So I was just curious if, but if you're going to look into it, that would be great.
Yes, no, we can definitely do that.
I just wanted to thank the ECE staff. I feel safe about sending our children to the school. They've done a great job. If you look around, you guys have maintained the least positive cases, and it's really refreshing to know my children are coming and things are going to be clean and safe for them. So I wanted to thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Carissa.
You're welcome.
Yeah, echo Carissa. This is Katie Matus and Liam Smith. Definitely echo all of the communications and the work that you guys are doing. We definitely see it and appreciate all of that and all the communications that you guys send out. Definitely know that who to go to when we do have questions, and know when we're going to be receiving that comm. So understand that's a lot of information to put together. So thank you for due diligence on that.
Thank you, Katie.
Do you have any idea when parents may be allowed back into the classrooms to some extent?
No, we actually have been discussing that as well. It sounds like for the general population to receive vaccine, it looks like it's being pushed into late spring, into summer. So it could be something to where we start at the beginning of next school year, and that it would be more of a logistical way of dropping off. That way we are still maintaining the safety of not the extra lingering, going in one way, out the other way. So that is something that we actually have been talking about most recently, because I know how much families miss coming in and interacting with your child's teacher, and and vice versa. I know how much our teachers really miss that connection to their parents in the classroom. So we will be looking at that more closely, and then as we get closer into the school year, into the summer, that is something that we will be providing more information on, and we'll make a decision.
From a national perspective, a lot of JCCs who didn't have that policy, when a parent would come into a classroom and someone either in the classroom or their family had a positive test, it would take out a number of staff that you wouldn't normally have had that issue. So one of the reasons why we've had a very low positive test rate is because of the policies that we have in place. So
Yeah, totally agree. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, in some ways it's easier on parents. You don't have the crying toddler chasing you out the door. But it is nice to get those context clues that you get from being in the classroom and engaging. So it's kind of a balance between the two as a parent.
Of course.
Yeah, and I miss going into the classrooms and visiting with many of your children too. So it's not just you.
I have one more question. I want to echo all of the kind compliments and thank yous, because I think every parent that I know, and I know you all have been especially patient with me and my family as we've been nervous about this whole thing. And I just think the world of you all for how well you've managed it. So thank you. It's great to trust you and know that our kids are with you all day. But also just wanted to ask, as it relates to kind of revisiting the hours, is there a certain, like, will you revisit that each quarter to determine when it might be possible again, or what can parents expect in terms of when they might just get updates on whether or not that will be changing over the course of the coming year, knowing that it's indefinite at this point, but also wanting to have some sense of when we might hear, an update?
No, good question. Actually, Aaron and I had talked about this when we were, looking at making this a decision and having those metrics in place. So when we know, because, Abby does all of the scheduling for the school, knowing what we need to cover a full day of programming, it's important that we are not just like, okay, so now we have everybody. But then the next day it's like, oh, well, there went 2 people, because, that's really what's happened before. We're fully staffed on one day and then like, boom, there goes, our great plan. So we can definitely put in a communication update that is like every 3 months, just to kind of let everybody know where we're at, because that is our goal. We want to be fully staffed. We want to be able to provide care. We know that everybody is, working and it looks different for everybody. Our goal is for this not to be forever, but we really have to make sure that we meet our own goals of staffing. And I think what it would look like, it wouldn't be from 8 to 5 and then boom, 7 to 6. We would gradually add on what we know that we are able to cover. Does that make sense? Or does that answer your question?
I think so. I mean, I think hearing that you might, kind of formally update everybody about every 3 months is what I was getting at. So I think that is helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anything we can do to help you recruit teachers? Like, are there any sources that you would like to get more referrals from, or, if there's any Facebook parent groups or whatever, can we post your positions there and stuff like that?
I mean, yes, I think for us, like our biggest, like we know that this is a huge change for you. So ours is like a call to action for all of you. We are hiring. You have a lot of networking capabilities. We really want everyone to know like what a great place this is, which I think people know. We're just right now in a situation where everybody's looking for something different. So any networking groups, publications that that we can be a part of, we will send you our job descriptions. I'll give you my cell phone, which most of you already have, but that's what we need from you. Just say, hey, this is a great place. Come work here. That's how you can help.
Great. If you'll send out the job descriptions with your next weekly update or whatever, I would be happy to share them.
Okay, I can do that. Thanks, Valerie.
I just had a quick question. Are there, and you might have said this earlier, so I'm sorry. Are there any other rooms that you're like concerned that are getting to a point of shutting down? Like, is there buffer within rooms within different wings? You know, you were able to absorb those other two by shutting the other two rooms down. So I was just curious if we have a plan for that. And I had a second question, but now it fell out of my head. So you can answer that one.
Okay, yes. So as Eric had shared, you know, we have the potential of losing two other staff, two other full-time main teachers, to no fault of their own, you know, life changes, a big move out of state. With the one classroom, it could displace 14 children. But because we are aware of the situation, we already have plans for all 14 of those children of where they might go if this should happen. And so that's where, for us, by capping some of these rooms, it really has allowed us to think outside of the box and look at how we can regroup to be able to continue having the children stay within our program versus us telling families, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to leave completely, because that's what we're trying not to do. Like, we're really trying to prevent that. So yes, we are always on top of regrouping, and that's where I think the phrase, because prior to COVID, when we would have breakfast or at 5 o'clock when teachers would leave, you know, we would combine children, like they're coming in for breakfast. So, you know, we really weren't aware of who was coming in besides like the teachers. And then maybe at 5 o'clock, we would be like, okay, well, we're going to have these children go over here so we can stay combined to continue to meet ratio. But we really looked at it very different now with COVID and very intentional. And that's why we call it grouping, because they're staying together. We know who was with who. And that is, you know, very important when we do have a positive case. And that's why you have seen no spread, because we're like, okay, this is the group, this is who needs to quarantine. And so we're always on top of it. We're just always hoping that nobody throws us a loop. And then, but you know what? We've always had a plan. It might not be plan A or B, but at least it's plan W. So that's how we roll.
I love a plan W.
There you
That
go.
makes perfect sense. My follow-up question was, do you guys do like a, because I'm a manager, so I'm aware if you get the call you're not expecting from somebody. Do you guys do, or before COVID, do you do like a bench of like part-time people to fill, like, because it's easier to probably, not easier to like have a backup staff of part-time and pull to full-time, or how does that kind of work? So you have people to slide into slots more easily? Is that part of kind of the strategy?
So we used to have that, and we used to have like a sub list that we would be able to call on if a teacher called in sick, or if we had a teacher that was going on vacation, that we would be able to call on them to come into work at the last minute. But unfortunately, you know, that started like not happening because we just almost were like taking them in to then be like permanent placements. And then we've noticed over the last probably 2 years, the makeup of our part-time staff from colleges have really changed. So when Aaron was a director and I was the assistant director and we came in 10 years ago, there was a plethora of college students working. You know, we probably had 12 to 15. And so it was wonderful. But what we've noticed over the last 2 years, maybe 3, is that college students are looking for different things. So they're either, you know, being supported by their parents, and their parents are like, you know, keep focusing on school, keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to work and it's okay. Or you have the college student that is going to school, paying multiple bills and needs an income that's greater than what we are able to pay, because there is a difference between a part-time staff and a full-time teacher. And so we've seen the makeup of those college kids drastically change over the last couple of years. So we're hoping, and the goal is that once, I don't want to say that COVID is over because it won't be, but that once school is back in the fall, that we're going to see a change and that we are able to start bringing in those college kids because they're back on campus.
Understanding that the hours appear to be 8 to 5 moving forward for the foreseeable future, any thought to serving breakfast at 8 o'clock?
Actually, that is something that we have talked about. And so we are going to make our final decision of what that would look like. We would need to put a time frame on that just because of when we serve snack, because we participate in the food program. And so our snack is typically served around 9:15. But I will say, unfortunately, it's not going to be Mrs. Grimm's French toast or the scrambled eggs. So that will come later in the future, but we have talked about, you know, what else can we provide during a short amount of time before snack is served. And then we'll make a decision and we'll send that information out to you.
And so I guess just to follow up, what sorts of things are you considering providing?
So it would be like a Nutri-Grain bar, fruit bar, yogurt, something that is easy versus what Mrs. Grimm does in terms of like a full breakfast, cereal.
And the children gets, if my understanding, the children get snacks beginning at 9:15 to 9:30, depending on the classroom. So they're not there long before they're already eating. We're very grateful for your kindness and your support, and we're very appreciative. We take our charge of taking care of our most precious assets in the community. Or as my late father would say, all the dividends that you have created. We look forward to working together for many more years, growing your children, and also looking forward to looking back on this saying, we remember when we were having challenges with staff, and we appreciate all your support and your good efforts on our behalf and your kind words.
I do want to take a moment while I have all of the parents here to publicly thank again Erica and Abby. The dedication that they've shown throughout COVID has been remarkable. I'm very grateful for their can-do attitude. And as we've had to pivot and change and figure things out day to day, month to month, it's been wonderful to work with them. They care so much about the program, and this has been a tough decision to make, but we continue to work together, and I just really appreciate them. And to all the families, I really appreciate all of you too for sticking with us, and we're doing the best that we can because we want to provide the care that you expect, and we love your children. So thank you.